Hello everyone. Welcome to Citizen Science Discussion Series. Citizen Science Discussion Series is an S4W initiative aimed at fostering collaboration and knowledge sharing among water researchers involved in various citizen science projects around the world. It aims to provide a platform for citizen science projects to be showcased, share project experiences, and discuss the learnings and challenges for a broader global audience. We firmly believe that we all have a lot to learn from each other. This is the third episode of Citizen Science Discussion Series, and we have Sandra de Vries as our invited speaker. She is the founder of PULSAQUA and also a guest researcher at TU Delft Netherlands.
What I was hoping to explain in this webinar series is using the case studies that I've been working on, the citizen science project that I have been working on, or mainly still working on, how I believe that this citizen science implementation for water management really needs a local design. So that's what I've tried to focus my slides on. Because I think it really matters in how you work with citizen science regarding water management topics. Now, before I go into that, it's good for you all to know that indeed 5 years ago I set up this company called PULSAQUA, where we try to help implement citizen science. So we try to help NGOs, governments, knowledge institutes to implement citizen science in the water sector. So with water-related environmental problems where society then can be involved. So think about climate adaptation topics, environmental pollution of water, but also weather and climate related topics there where water is concerned. And of course, we try to do this by helping to develop citizen science projects. We're also trying to see how citizen science projects can be deployed to reach impact, and that impact can of course be in many different ways, but we really try to have only projects that we believe can be helping regarding real societal and environmental issues that are occurring all over the world. And yeah, we also nowadays start helping to improve the performance of citizen science projects. And regarding all this, we also give workshops to train people, researchers, governments, and other and citizens on how to implement citizen science. But this is what we've been mainly working on. And my own background is in hydrology and water resource management. As a civil engineer, I try to focus on topics that are related to water because that is also something that I understand the context of and the content, and where we can really help also to design, for example, monitoring methods. So that's an important part of why we focus on water, especially. By now, the company has about, I'm not on my own anymore. So 5 years ago, I started on own. And now we're working with 4 people, and 4 to 6, I would say, because we also have always 1 or 2 interns or students working with us to research specific topics that are related to the work that we're doing. So our team is growing, but small. So in the first 3 slides, I actually chose 3 different definitions of citizen science, because as some of you will know, citizen science is well, there's still a very big discussion of what actually citizen science is. It's a very wide range of implementation possibilities, and there is still no real agreement in the research world of what it really is. But I've tried to showcase 3 or 4 definitions that I think are a nice example. This one, for example, by Annabeth Suman, which is a very interesting researcher trying to look at how citizen science data can be influenceable for lawsuits. So to help citizens to work on advocacy. And they define citizen science as a broader transition towards an open science. And that's actually often done. But they also they see it as an enabler of openness in science. So it's not just part of it, but it's even enabling the openness in science even more. If you then go to the next more commonly used definition, then you can see that this is a process, according to this definition, where concerned citizens, government agencies, industries, academia, community groups, and local institutions collaborate. And I've put like an underscore on collaborate because this is for me really an important part. It's a collaboration between many different stakeholders, and they try to define which stakeholders is to work on scientific with scientific methods to find solutions to problems. And in the environmental topics like water management, it's often for monitoring, tracking, and responding to issues of common community. While, for example, in social sciences or in how do you say it, perhaps more like health-related topics, it's often a different input by citizens to collaborate on. Then if you go to the next definitions, the last two, then you can see that here they see it as an involvement of individuals, lay people, in scientific research. This is really, these are more top-down definitions where you can see that instead of looking at it from a definition of citizens and scientists and governments can work together, and so it can be bottom up as well, like started by citizens. Here you can see that these definitions focus mainly on scientists involving individuals or lay people or volunteers to join in answering scientific questions or doing scientific research. And so the involvement and the partnering, it's still a form of collaboration, but it's seen in a top-down perspective. So I think that's very important to know, where did the project start and how is this collaboration created. I'm not actually saying that one or the other is better, but it's good to realize the differences. And I myself have been working in projects with all different types of initiations. And I will give you some examples in the coming examples. Also, what I think is important to realize is that there are many reasons for implementing citizen science. So I think it is really a scientific method in that sense, that can be implemented by any type of stakeholder. I sometimes really like to call it stakeholder science. And it's not always an applicable method. Like when you do a research, you always use a specific method to do your research, and you choose that method based on what you want to achieve. And that's the same with citizen science. It's not always a methodology that will give you more gains. For example, from scientific perspective, for example, it really only gives added benefit when you want to create, for example, much more spatial or temporal resolution data that you can otherwise not achieve, for example, or because it's in private gardens and otherwise you wouldn't be able to get that data because it's a private area. But of course, there's also with clear data and research benefits, but there are much more benefits related to society, impact, and education. And if that's also important, then citizen science becomes an interesting methodology, even though you would also, other methodologies or more regular research methodologies would be just as well. If you want to add more awareness raising or scientific literacy, for example, then it's a very interesting method as well. And as I already mentioned also with the definitions, it's really important to realize why you or others apply citizen science, and who started it, because it will influence the design of the research project. It really matters a lot. But yeah, in principle, citizen science can contribute to a better society by working on more relevant questions. It can resolve issues brought in by citizens. There are data or insights that can only be reached or gathered when citizens are involved because of, for example, local knowledge, or because of indeed these private areas that you will otherwise not reach. or if you're talking about health, much more personal issues that somebody that is constantly around can see much better. But it also, in the end, can increase scientific literacy. And then can we come back to this first definition about openness of science, because it really increases not just the involvement into your project, but it also helps others that are not aware of so much of what science is doing to get them involved and to increase their scientific literacy, to make them understand the process of science and scientific research, which is, I think, very important nowadays when we're talking about fake news and fake information and what is truth and what isn't, to really be able to start understanding much more that science is a process and how this process goes. So coming back to the showcases that I wanted to do, I want to talk, my apologies. What this is a bit from 1 moment. John, can you take this? Hello, here's my feet. No idea. Hello. My very big apologies. I am at home and there is a big problem with our internet. So this is probably somebody calling about that, and I needed to take that option. My apologies. Okay, so where was I? What we're trying to do is, via the showcases, I'm going to explain to you how we've implemented it, what the results are, but also why I think then local input is really essential, and maybe even how we try to take that into account in the design that we did. And I want to start with the Delft Measures project. So Delft Measures, as you can understand, is in the city Delft, which is in the area of the TU Delft, so the Technical University of Delft, where I'm also a guest lecturer, as Rajaram already explained. And this is already the 5th year this year that we're running Delft Measures, and it started in 2020. And I don't know if you all remember, but 2020 was the first Corona year that it was really spreading all over the world. And we had plans to start Delft Measures, and then Corona hit us and everybody else, and everything stopped. And we were not sure if it was a good idea to start involving people if you cannot have workshops or meetings or everything. But we did start, and we started doing manual rainfall measurements actually together with Smartphones for Water. So the first year we really did it together with them. So I thought it was a nice start to explain that process. And we used the self-made rainfall funnels to start measuring together with citizens in Delft. And actually, because there was nothing else to do and people couldn't go on their regular holiday spots or do whatever they did in their free time normally, there were actually much more applications and much more people interested in joining than we had expected. So in the end, it was a very interesting try, and we learned a lot from that first year piloting a project where we tried to measure rainfall together with citizens in Delft. And what the goal is actually to understand the variability of rain in the city. Because I don't know if you're very familiar with this, but at least in the Netherlands, but also worldwide, there are much less measurements in cities of rainfall than actually on more countryside and rural areas. Because, for example, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, has these standards for measuring rainfall, where it requires a rainfall measurement device to be very far from objects, to not be influenced by the wind, for example, because wind patterns influence rainfall a lot. But if you then are in a city, you understand that this is always a problem. So there are much less measurements in cities, and also much less high resolution measurements in cities. But also because this wind influence, and there's so many high buildings, and also this heat island effect, there is actually a different rainfall pattern and variability in rain in the city. And Now with climate change, our intensities are really increasing a lot. So the rainfall intensities in the Netherlands, at least, are increasing due to climate change. And that matters a lot for design of sewer systems and pumping systems for our polder systems. Well, I'm not going to explain the whole water management situation in the Netherlands, but the fact is this is really an interesting research to then have a very high resolution network or grid of measurements. And the idea was to do this many more years ahead, of course, because you really need a very large data set to explain patterns that you can see. It also really depends if you have a lot of rainfall or not. So the first 2 years we did this only for 3 months, and we did manual measurements so we asked people to really measure every morning with manual measurement devices. And that's fine, of course, you can do this. But we didn't want to ask them to do that in a very over the whole year, because we were afraid that then there wouldn't be enough people interested. But over time we started realizing that we also needed more high resolution data. So not just spatial resolution was important, but also that we would have information every 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, not just over a whole day, not the sum of a day. So we started looking at low-cost rainfall weather stations. And as you can see in this picture below, we chose a station that was relatively cheap compared to many real professional systems. I think this is about, with all the costs in total, it's about 200 euros for one weather station, where you can measure at least rainfall, but also temperature and wind. But wind is a bit nonsensical in the garden in the Netherlands, because it doesn't really say anything anymore. But we started measuring with that, and it went really well. So we started also adding more and more measurements over time, because what we wanted was to motivate people to really join. And they started adding to research and knowledge for their own city, of course. That was their main motivation. But we also started asking them to think along in what Delft Measures should focus on for measurements and research. We asked them to join in other new small measurements of small groups. We would, for example, we started 1.5 years ago also measuring groundwater levels. So you can see a self-made groundwater gauging well, you could say, because then the Dutch soils are so soft because of the peat and clay, that they can actually dig this themselves and make a self-made well, and where they can measure their own groundwater levels manually. And we also started, for example, including them in writing a paper together of how Delft Measures fitted within the open science principles of the TU Delft. So it was really a case study also for open science, coming back to the definition of how citizen science can increase openness of science. And I think what was also really important is, of course, is that indeed we could showcase that the data that we were providing was very valuable, but also validated. So we had, especially in the first years, many researchers on how to make sure that we can compare it with official meteorological data measurements. We had bachelor and master science students from the TU Delft research data over the years. And we also started working together with the municipality to see how the data could also be valuable for them. So not just for the researchers at the TU Delft, but also for the municipality. And the data that we're now collecting with the weather stations is also uploaded to a so-called weather observations website, a network of amateur weather stations that is hosted by the meteorological organizations of the UK and the Netherlands. And I think you can see that the data starts becoming important for different data needs, which made it more and more important. But still, the fact that locally local partners actually forms the project to what it is now, and that it is really relevant for the university, that all these people live nearby, that they can meet the researchers, but also that they know that in the end, maybe the data will really help to improve their own situation, so locally relevant, made it really important for people to join, but also to keep joining. And then, of course, because it's local and we are there, so I mean, I live next to Delft and I used to live there when I was a student, and my partner is still working there. You can see that the direct contact that I have with the citizens, I can just pass by if, for example, a weather station doesn't seem to connect with the internet. So we can really help them out. And this direct connection creates bonds between the organizing team and the researchers and the citizens themselves. And that's I think really a valuable, extremely valuable part. And then, yeah, to create a final word on this, I think the direct impact for the participating citizens becomes much more clear because of that. And we really try to involve them with newsletters or webinars or workshops to do all these type of things. Okay, so that was one case. Now we go to the next one, and this is the Vliet cleans up. This is actually, the Vliet is a river, or maybe better said, a Dutch canal system, because it's not a natural river. And you can see here in the map that it's a river going from the city Leiden through The Hague to Delft. And there was this project was actually an event focused on joining with about 30 kids and 4 adult volunteers to make like 4 days of supping, so stand-up paddling. I don't know if we all are aware of that, but this is like on a surfing board, but then instead of surfing, you just stand on it and you pedal. And the idea was to combine water sports with cleanup of macroplastic, but also to monitor how much macroplastic was found, and to start monitoring or to start developing microplastic monitoring methodology for citizen science methodology, to do that together with the kids and the adult volunteers. So in the end, we developed methods, but we also really implemented it together with these kids. So we tried to make an event that made the invisible visible. And again, you can see how we are doing something, building something that you can implement maybe worldwide, but that locally was relevant because of the event that was already being held. So by adding the monitoring, we made that event actually more relevant. And to do this, we developed 2 different methods based on existing methods already. So there is already this so-called ManTat that is used in seas and oceans to monitor plastics. But of course, this is a very big system that cannot be used in smaller waters. And since the Dutch waters are like almost still standing, so they flow, but yeah, this is like an artificial flow and it's very slow. You cannot just place a net in the water, you really need to drag it through the water. And so we started using the so this pedal, as you can see on with a surfing board, to to drag a net through the water and collect or filter the microplastics that are floating on top of the water. And we developed 2 systems. One is the subtroll, and the other the microtroll, we called it. And the microtroll was based on a Canadian system that they used, that they actually called it the baby leg. And now you can see it on this picture why they call it that way, because you use a baby panty. You can also just use a cut-off pantyhose from just a lady. But you can see that this really looks like the bottom of a baby with their legs, because it's filled with this duckweed that we have in the Netherlands in summer a lot. So this was quite a lot of work to uncover the microplastic pieces that were in there. But you can see a little bit how the systems look like. They float in the water on the top, and then the water enters and is filtered through, and then the microplastics stay inside the net with the subtroll, or in the panty with the microtroll. And the panty version, actually the microtroll version, is applicable for kids because they can make it themselves. But also it's not too heavy to actually go on the water with, while this left system, the subtroll, really is only for adults because it's far too tough to do this otherwise. But also the making of the system, and it's much more expensive and also much more labor intensive. So we designed two systems. One is more labor intensive, but also more scientifically valid. And the other is much more also this awareness raising, the creativity that you can really do something like this yourself. And the showcasing of how much plastics can be found also. And then you can see that we had we made the findings. We really pinpointed the locations where we did the dragging of the trolls. And you can see, for example, on the right picture, some examples. These are the pieces of plastic foam that you can find. Some are macroplastics, other microplastics, but also smaller layers of foil or fragments or pellets. And you can see this is the graphs are in Dutch, I'm sorry, but you can see how much micro plastics we saw and how much macroplastics in these nets, because of course bigger than 5 millimeters becomes macroplastics, and how much types. So we had foil and foam and pieces of cord, pellets or nurdles, better known as nurdles, but also fragments of plastic that have been falling apart. And you can see that is actually the biggest part. So that was really interesting. So we showcased the project. And as you can see, we really we were able to also collect samples that gave insight into the width of the pollution. We in that sense proved the case of these different trolls. Here you see us again paddling with two next to each other, because we decided to do two next to each other, so we had a validation of the difference and how different the two same systems would collect, and so how representative a sample is. And in principle, again, for this local implementation, it really gave direct inputs. We could contribute to a local event to improve the experience. We also improved our own environment together with these kids. So we try to show them how to solve issues they deal with themselves. Yeah? So it's not just, it really becomes local awareness raising. And we also we learned much about the direct interaction from the children. So the aim was to develop these methodologies for worldwide use. By doing it locally, we really understood what the challenges are of implementing it, and so to improve the manuals, etc. And finally, we validated our first methodologies. You can see some pictures of how we implemented it together with the kids, how we gave them presentations of the results, but also how we made the micro trolls with the kids, completely to the right. Okay, and then there's the final, how do you say it, example. I don't know, Rajaram, how much time do I have still?
Yeah, I think you are good, still good.
Okay, perfect. Well then, just let me know if I have like a little time left and I know how to change my story. Okay, so the last and final example is about a program that I've been working with also for the past 5 to 6 years. This foundation, Drinkable Rivers, does much more than citizen science, but for the citizen science implementation, I've been helping to really develop that and maintain it by now as well. But the Drinkable Rivers Foundation, as you can see also in this picture, is really trying to focus on how to collaborate within watersheds. So it is actually looking at a boundary perspective of water and water management, and it's looking at how a watershed is actually a family, a water family. And while drinkable rivers tries to focus on consciousness and action regarding improving the water quality of our waters. They look at this water basin or water basin perspective, so that you don't stop thinking at the border. And what the idea is that the drinkable, as the word says, it, drinkable rivers, is an indicator for the health of an environmental system, because everything in the end ends up in the river or the water. And to be able to understand whether or not, because everybody can understand the idea of having been able to drink directly from a water source. So for example, if I go to the mountains, I'm actually able to drink, like just able to just put my hands in the water and drink the water, while I would never do that here in the Netherlands, because the water is just not of good enough quality. So the concept is very imaginative for people. They can understand what it means. Not that, so the healthy ecosystem and how to contribute to that, to in the end result into a concept that people can understand. So you don't have to talk about difficult parameters. To do this, Lian works on different things, but what she mainly focuses on are river walks. So she walks from the source to the sea, or from the source to the end of the river. And she tries to take in along all stakeholders living and working along the river. So, for example, the example you see here in the picture is the river walk she did in 2018. That was the first walk ever on the Meuse River. And she tries to, or not tries to, she actually really engages all these stakeholders. And after such a river walk, and well, actually during the river walk, she also starts taking measurements. So she starts making a sort of a zero reference measurement to showcase what the water quality at that moment is. And by involving people, she develops two different communities, like action community groups. For example, for this Meuse River, by now there is a very active mayors community that has been created by all these mayors along the river that normally never talk to each other because they're from 3 different countries, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, but by now are actually communicating with each other because they understand that what happens upstream involves what is happening downstream, and that they all are now committed to making the Meuse drinkable again. So that's a very interesting policy-related commitment that she's trying to engage with. But on the other hand, we also actually, as I said, we start taking measurements with people. And she involves these people already taking measurements, school children, but also adults. And from that, some small so-called hubs start arising. And these hubs are individuals or people that we start engaging with and training to become our citizen science ambassadors, you could say. So we train these hubs. They get a measurement kit and they become their local implementers of citizen science, water quality related ambassadors. And oh, by the way, the picture you see here is from Lian Poa. That's the founder of Drinkable Rivers and the one that's really started it all. And yeah, if you are interested more in about what she's doing, then just Google Drinkable Rivers, or try to find some TED Talks of Lian Poa, because she's very really an engaging person and very interesting. There's also an English book written by now. I mean, it was Dutch, but it's also translated by now. So yeah, if you're interested in what she's doing and why she's working on it, please, feel free to ask me about it later on. By now we have about, how do you say it, like maybe 30 active, but also in total 60 hubs all over the world, because you see that they're starting to engage also now in other countries, except for Europe. So we have been, of course, starting in Europe because we're a Dutch organization. But by now we're spreading all over the world with hubs that are so local individuals, organizations, or companies that want to engage and have local goals and ambitions regarding implementation of water quality measurements. And I think within this project, it's even more clear how we designed the local relevance, because we wanted to go international, but Lian POA cannot be everywhere. So you need to have people that start taking up the responsibility of monitoring the health of their rivers. That's how we look at it. And together with these hubs, we are now starting to do that, but they have all their own goals. And when they become a hub, we give them a measurement kit. They get manuals and instruction videos, and we by now have also a data platform where they can record the data, but also engage with us, or maybe even engage with other hubs via the data platform. They will get their own hub logo. They actually we enable them to communicate as like part of the Drinkable Rivers community. They participate in measurement weeks. We help with data interpretation, so that's actually something we're still working on, because it's like a young organization, and we are now getting into a data trend that becomes more interesting. And we have like a seasonal newsletter, so we also try to showcase what they're doing in these newsletters. And what we then expect from them, and I think mainly what is in the middle there, is that they create their own measurement plan. And we even have like a video training and also an online meetup to really help them along with this process, to understand how the tools that we are providing them are made relevant because of what they can do with it in their local environment. And it really matters, of course, because every river and every pollution case is different. So we cannot decide what is more important, or where to measure and how to measure and how often to measure. So we really try to guide them in this. And yeah, we get like hubs all over the world. It can be school children, it can be adults, it can be activists, it can be young people, it can be companies where they want to work together with their employees on this. It can be museums. To be honest, we have like a whole range, also farmers, of groups that are joining. And sometimes these are just individuals that want to measure on their own, or want to engage the whole community that they are living in. And sometimes they are already working on engagement, and this is just an extra tool for them to be able to implement that, like, for example, Water Museum. And I think what we've been seeing now is that the local focus of these hubs is threefold. So either they really focus on this awareness and education in their own community and area. So they do measurements with schools, or they involve communities and groups, small groups, to measure with them. But there are also groups that are really focusing on the data collection. So it's been really hardcore, that they want to have more awareness and advocacy concerning the issues that they see on water quality pollution. And then you have the third option, which is more of a combination of the two, where these hubs really just want to put rivers and water quality on the map. So really work on engagement and cooperation with many different organizations, because they just want to increase the value of how people and mainly organizations are looking at it. So there's you could say that the middle option is a bit more activism, while the final option is a little bit more of an collaboration process. And we try to showcase also using these focuses that they have on how to guide them into making their own measurement plans. So if I want to conclude, I would say that if you when we look at these three different cases, I think if you implement citizen science in water management, and maybe that's with other sectors as well, to be very honest, I'm not completely sure. I think that there are a lot of these very global projects where, for example, people are joining in processing online data, or how to make puzzles for health issues. I think you can make it more global. While for me, for water management, I've always seen that it comes down to a local involvement, but also really the local context, and therefore local design is necessary. And then to be able to do that, local partners or implementers are essential. Like, you cannot do it with them. So many of my projects are still in the Netherlands, and if they are externally, then so outside of the Netherlands, then you really need to have a very committed local partner that is able to start keeping this going, because it commits. On average, you work on a long-term thing when you're talking about citizen science engagement. And finally, you can use more general methods, so more worldwide implemented methods. Like, for example, with the drinkable rivers method, we're really using something. The measurement kit is meant to be internationally available, but for the local implementation, you need to make your own choices in how you're actually using that. And that, I think, is the main important part. So it's not the technicalities that are local, but it is the way you decide to implement it and how it will be working best. Okay, so there's much more to tell, but if you're interested, listen to our podcast. It's called Design Citizens. It's on Spotify. But there's also a direct link to the podcast. So if you want that one, just let me know. I will share this presentation with Rajaram then in PDF, and then you can also click on this button and then you go directly to the Spotify link in case you like that. But also you can find me on LinkedIn with the QR code in the bottom. Yeah, happy to have a conversation now about what I've been telling you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra, for this wonderful presentation. Yeah, I think we already have a lot of things in our mind with these three wonderful projects. And I think all these three projects have some uniqueness in itself about how citizen science has been practiced. So the floor is open to all of our participants for the discussion. So for the discussion, if you have any question or comments, I would request you first raise your hand and then turn on your mic to speak. So yeah, we can start the discussion. Yeah. It's always hard to get the first one. Okay, Sanjeev is here. Yeah, Sanjeev, you can turn on your mic.
So good evening, everyone from Nepal. And thank you, Sandra, for very comprehensive and very knowledgeable presentation. And I really enjoyed to learn about different citizen science-based project currently being doing by PULSAQUA. So my name is Sanjeev Neupane, and I'm currently CEO at Smartphones for Water Nepal. And Smartphones for Water Nepal is have been monitoring the hydrometeorological status uh, of Kathmandu Valley and also outside Kathmandu Valley using the citizen science approach. And now we are also doing some projects linking the citizen science-based rainfall data with disaster events and turning some early warning system as well. So I have a small question, or let's say it's suggestions from your side. So what are your strategies in communicating the findings from the citizen science project with the public and policymakers? This is my first question. And also, and what are your strategies in disseminating, like preparing the knowledge product and collaboration with the local and national level government? Yeah, that's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I feel like I need a new presentation for answering these questions, but I'll do my utter best to give you a very comprehensive answer. I think, first of all, again, this really depends on the goal you have. So, for example, when you go to the Delft Measures project, the it's very clear it's city related. So it's, of course, we started with a research perspective, but as you already understood in the presentation, we started involving the municipality almost from the start. And by doing that, in the beginning, it was just because partly because we tried to get some funding from them, but also because we knew that this would be relevant for the city in the end. So we didn't immediately try to convince them that the data that we were collecting was very necessary, but we tried to work together with them both on the participatory kind of level, trying to showcase them that what we were going to do or what we were doing really involved people in topics that are important for the city. So science, but also mainly this climate change problems, and that they want people to be aware of this so they can also start cooperating and communicating better when they have to do adaptations in the city. But the second part is that we also started involving experts within the municipality that are, for example, responsible for the sewage system design. And by showcasing them and working together with them and asking them what data they would need after we had proven ourselves, we started being able to form also the project in a way that became very relevant for them. So it's not just about showing your results, but as I said, I really believe citizen science is sort of stakeholder science. You work together with people, you collaborate, and in that sense, you create better value. This is not always the case, but for me, this is, I think, always a very important aspect. And of course, we also showcase it because we need to involve the citizens. So as I said, we make infographics, we do webinars, and we invite not just the participating citizens, but also the municipality if they want to join. So they are really part of the process. So for example, now the 5th year is coming in and we have sort of made the first plan, and on my to-do list is now to call the municipality contact person to see whether or not we are still in line with how she perceives it, to keep them involved. And also in the meantime, we've already taken into account the expert knowledge from the municipality to know that our plans are relevant for them, so we increase the potential for the data used for them. Then if you go to drinkable rivers, it becomes completely different, because as I explained, this is like the foundation is trying to become internationally relevant, trying to really put the concept of drinkable rivers on the international level. So the levels that we're working on is completely different. What I've been explaining is how we're going to make it locally relevant. And the process that we're in now is we're still building up that. So we're still trying to, for now, make sure that all the hubs know what to do, how to measure, where to measure, so their measurement plans are correct, that they take the measurements correctly, that they record the data on the data platform, that we start getting results on data showcasing to show what it actually means. That's still the process. But after that, and actually we started a little bit now this year already, we want to start showcasing to them how then they can use that data to go to their local municipality, to go to their university, to start researching the data in more things, or how to go to, in Dutch, in the Netherlands, for example, you have water boards. There is already a hub that has made a connection with the water board and has asked to get their formal data and see whether or not they can cooperate on this. How can their data add to the formal data that is already there? So this process is slowly starting. But then on a global level, Liane Pawa is already talking to governments, national organizations. Last year, she went to the New York water conference. I don't know if you know, but last year, New York, the UN meeting was related completely to water, which is only once every 50 years or something. So she's really trying to talk to relevant international or national policy members in taking this along. And it has started doing things like, for example, political parties in the Netherlands have started adopting the drinkable rivers concept within their program for elections. There has been discussions by municipalities to say, okay, we're choosing the drinkable rivers concept as a leading guideline in how we're going to manage our water management issues. But this is, of course, very scarce. But it's slowly beginning there, and then I think you have different levels. But to be honest, it's also something we're still partly figuring out. It's a hard process. Yeah. So very long answer, but this is what I can tell you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
And I think,
yeah.
Sorry, can I add one more thing? I think what I think I'm showcasing here, and which I didn't mention in my presentation, you cannot do this on your own. No person has all the skills you need for citizen science. It just doesn't exist. You can do enough trainings, but you need to partner with very skilled professionals or experts or enthusiasts that are willing to spend time on this, either because they're just really involved in what you do, or because it coincides with the goals they already have. And this is, I think, very, very important. Sorry, Rajaram, go ahead.
No. So we have two questions from one of our participants. TT Thuang, so would you like to ask question by yourself, or may I ask it for you?
Hello. So I can ask myself because I afraid that someone want to ask. So I just take the message for you. And first of all, I would like to thank Simon for sharing the information to us today. It's very helpful for us. And I'm really interested in the city science for now, as I'm must work on groundwater resources. And my first question is, can you share some example on city science for groundwater resources? And the second question is, I saw the last project you provide on the health of the river, and so many countries participate on the that project, but for Vietnam, not yet. I mean, and can you share some experience to work with government on public data to your website? I mean, because sometimes in our country, they may not allow to public the data on the international platform. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will come back on the last question if I understood it well, but a very interesting question. Actually, something I'm currently working on. Actually, the first question. So the first question would be basically, yes, I can share some experiences. I'm working together with a very small, new founded foundation by a friend of mine who developed an application on the phone that can measure the groundwater levels by just placing your phone on top of the well and having an audio resonance go down and up. In principle, this should be possible with any type of phone until 30 meters deep. So depending on how deep your groundwater, like really, really deep groundwater levels is not possible with this. But it's a very interesting way because it opens up without any expensive sensors the measurement of groundwater. Now, if you're talking about measurement of water quality of groundwater, I'm not really experienced with this. It's actually more complicated. And you, of course, will need different parameters and different tools than we measure, for example, with the Drinkable Rivers program, because there we focus on surface waters. And there's a completely different parameter range that is interesting for groundwater. But also how to sample that is a different thing, and I have no experience with it. I do know that this is complex. And I think the biggest issue with groundwater measurements is that either you cannot reach a groundwater well because it's protected or closed off for the public, or the groundwater well is hard to maintain. I don't really know. This is what I know internationally a bit of an issue. So that really depends on the local setting again. So local setting. But this tool I could share with you, I will put it in the chat in a bit. regarding your second question, actually, I am having a meeting with one of the drinkable rivers hubs in this afternoon after this webinar, because this is a hub in Kenya, and they are actually not uploading any data to our data platform at the moment because of exactly these issues. And at this moment, the drinkable rivers data is not shared yet. So we believe that open data doesn't mean that you have to share it with everybody. It means that it is available for the citizens that are, that would be the first, it's available for the citizens that are there. But it can only be shared if these hubs are willing to share it themselves. So when you join the Drinkable Rivers platform, you can only see the data of hubs if you become a fan, and you have to request to become a fan, and they have to validate that. They have to allow you. So this is really up to the hub. But this is not yet for her hub clear. So I'm going to try to explain that. And we're building on a data protocol to really make sure that the data is protected for these hubs. But we do believe that if you don't upload it to the data platform, you don't have a legal recording, which will help you to validate the data, to also be able for us to give you back your results, because that's what we're trying to work on, to have an automatic reporting of your, analysis of your data every once in a while. And this is something that can only be done if you put it online, if you really make sure that it's recorded somewhere and that it's safe. Because if you just put it on paper somewhere, then it can get lost. This happens. So we're trying to find actually an option where this doesn't become a problem. But this is also a work in progress. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we have our next question from David. Yeah, you can turn on your mic.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, hello everybody. Yeah, thanks Sandra for the presentation, for sharing your experience. Yeah, I wondered. Yeah, overall, yeah, I agree with all the sentiment about everything you said, but I was just interested in the projects. I've got your website open on the other screen here, and I was looking through the portfolio of projects, and then especially the projects which you talked about, like the paddleboarding and yeah, the Delft, the rainfall monitoring. And I wondered, were they also bottom up? Like, did people come to you saying, yeah, we want to measure microplastics, we've got an idea of doing it with stand-up paddleboards, or we want to measure rainfall? Or were they your ideas and then you found a place? And then, yeah, related to that, I just wondered how the funding worked. Because I can imagine with the data from both of those sets of projects, once you've got the data, it would be easy to convince people that look, yeah, this is valuable, you should be funding this. But when it was just an idea, I wondered, yeah, how it was funded.
Yeah, both very, very relevant questions. Let me start with the first. No, as I said, I don't believe that one or the other is better. So I work with any type of citizen science ideas. And mainly what I try is not to create my own citizen science ideas. I try to see where the need is. So I either wait until somebody comes to me and says, I want to work on this with citizen science, can you help me? Or I see if people are talking about something and I can say, have you ever thought about citizen science? Because this is, to be honest, a very new concept in the water management world. So that's not often like an obvious solution for many people. So with using the examples I already showcased, with Delft Measures, this was really due to different conversations I had with many people at the TU Delft, where I am a guest lecturer, where I knew researchers were working on this variability of rainfall. I also knew that the Open Science Department program in the TU Delft was trying to build up how to implement citizen science within open science. So they wanted to learn. And we also, so we used that to actually build the program on that need, but also the money became, actually answering your second question, came from them because they were in need of this. So in the beginning, the citizens were really from top down requested to join. But in the years after, as I explained to you, we started changing this. So we first started from top down, and then we added from bottom up. So we started asking, we had sessions with them, like, what other variabilities or parameters would you like to focus on? What are you interested in your own city? So the groundwater measurements actually only came out of the interest of the citizens, not by the researchers or the Delft municipality. So we started like trying to create a sort of a combined bottom up, top down, but the first setup was top down. If you then look at the fleet cleans up, this was initiated by somebody that works with bringing technical topics in primary school environments. So this is actually somebody that was not at all working on this topic. And I knew him from something else, and I started talking to him because he had this idea for creating an event with primary school children to clean up the environment. And then he's like, yeah, and I would like to add some extra value to it with perhaps citizen science. So for him, actually, it was not clear. You could say that he's not really bottom up, but he's sort of in the middle there. He's not a professional that needed data. He wanted to use citizen science for the awareness raising, to make more value into the topic that he wanted to give attention with kids. And so I combined it with the fact that I knew that there was an organization called the Ocean Movement that wanted to develop a microplastic methodology for freshwater systems. So I started talking with both, and then we created a consortium, and we requested for funding at an organization that's called the TU Foundation that has these specific goals, and they were really enthusiastic and gave us money. So this is a little bit how it went. There was a whole process. And then with the drinkable rivers, that's completely top down, bottom up. So Leon Poa, before she even founded her foundation, she was just, I wouldn't never call her a regular citizen, but she and I actually developed most of this in the beginning voluntarily. There was no money. We at some point got some budget to start testing. So then we could spread a first version of our measurement kit, and we started testing with these people. And only later on, we started having small projects with organizations that were interested in this. And at some point by now, we have small funding coming in by organizations that really just believe in the concept that she's building. And this is also the reason why she wanted to do it this way, instead of looking for funding first, which shows a lot of commitment. This is a really hard way of doing it, to be honest. But the reason why she wanted to do it, she didn't want to be dependent on funding that will try to focus your route. Because many of the funding schemas have like a specific requirements that you have to do. But she really wanted to fulfill her dream, you could say. And that's what she's doing. And by now, she has convinced people of her dream instead of focusing her dream into the convincing. But this takes years and a lot of work. So I'm not sure if that's for everybody. But I think I'm answering now both of your questions. So
yeah.
But I also do citizen science project with governments, and then they just pay for it. Just saying, it's just not an example I gave you here now, because I don't know.
Yes, just sorry to interrupt. I know Juan Tran has a question, but this is a question like for later that you don't have to answer now. It's actually like for Rajaram or for Sarabi or some of you guys there. I just wondered when you've listened to this presentation by Sandra, how like transferable to Nepal you think some of the projects, like the methodologies and the funding pathways, how applicable would they be in Nepal? But I don't want to eat into the next question by Juan Tran.
Yeah, as I said, everything is local. So I also think that these type of things really depend on the local situation. That's a completely different story, probably. I think so too. Yeah. But I think Juan is also having a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. You have a very informative presentation and share with us very interesting some case study about the citizen science in Lebanon. And I am Huân. I'm original from Vietnam, so I know that in the citizen science have been widely applied in the developed country for 2 decades, but in some developing country like Vietnam or in Nepal, it's just in recently. So sometimes it's very difficult for us to work with the local people, because I said that to implement the citizen science project, it's a necessary to work with the local partner to support some of the local activity. But sometimes this citizen science approach is quite new. So sometimes they don't care about it, or they don't know how to see the advantage of this program. So it's hard for us to implement the citizen science in Vietnam. And another thing is also related to fund. And normally, if the citizen science project is costly at the initial periods, we also need a lot of fund to buy some equipment or to invest some the communication strategy. So it's but maybe it's my concern you already answered before, but I just want to maybe you can share with me your own experience how we can some experience or some tip to implement the citizen science project some in some the developing country like Vietnam. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, to be very honest, I think I don't have like the holy grail in this thing. That's it's not easy. And I am very aware that I have the lucky chance that in the Netherlands we are more wealthy in that sense. We have also a government that is really focusing on water management, because the whole country is sort of depending on that, and that they have been since 2010 more and more aware that participation of the society is valuable. So this is something that only, and it was enabled because of that. Concerning Vietnam, I do know that there are examples of citizen science projects in Vietnam, but I don't know of many. I just know of a couple that have been initiated by TU Delft researchers. So that's really top-down initiations from experts from, at least here in the Netherlands, maybe they're also from other countries, I don't know. So it's possible, but then of course they have scientific funding from who knows where, maybe European Union, maybe international, maybe whatever, maybe Dutch funding. So that's something that I don't know about how they started, but I do know that the implementation is there. So then they apparently found local partners to do this with. So it is possible in that sense. I think the second part is concerning costs. Yes, I've also always find it funny when people say that citizen science is cheap. It's not, but it's mainly expensive because of the time labor. Like, so the labor that is in there, that makes it expensive. There's a lot of communication, engagement, outreach, time to trial and error. So there's a lot of time investments necessary. And then it really depends on what you want to do, whether you can do that cheap. So I think I already explained that some of my projects, they don't cost me any money because everybody already has a smartphone. So I'm using a globally existing application, for example. So internet on average is quite good everywhere. So really try to see what type of tools are available already developed internationally. So you don't have to develop the tool yourself. The other thing, like that microtroll for microplastics, pollution in water, it's made with literally like an old can, a tie wrap, and a pantyhose. Like, in that sense, this is really low cost. The rainfall measurements that we did with smartphones for water were by self-made rainfall devices. This is not the cost, but I would still say that it takes a lot of time, effort, and therefore costs to implement citizen science projects. And then for the local partner part, I do think, to be honest, this is something that depends on how you are. If you are like, this is really networking, and I cannot teach you to network. But if you not really like, if you don't like it yourself, then it's better to find a partner that is. So before finding a local partner, find somebody that has a very good network in the area. Because, for example, the project that I also did with Smartphones for Water in Ghana, there we had a local partner, but I didn't find that local partner. It wasn't me that did that. That was another partner that already worked there locally together with a local partner. And to have that was essential. So I think, yeah, I'm just trying to get some pinpoints, but this, what you're actually asking, is something that is not just answerable in a question, but we would need to really just, maybe we can have this a separate meeting sometime if you want.
Thanks for the sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you everyone for the questions. So I can entertain one more question. We are running out of time. So if, okay, Sudeep, go ahead.
Hello, Sandra. It was great to learn from you about the citizen scientist approach. So in Nepal, we are also mobilizing citizen science approach for rainfall monitoring. So in Nepal, one of our problem is regularity of citizen scientists. So for an example, if you recruit 200 citizen scientists, only 100 citizen scientists are regular. So what are the motivation approach you are using in Netherlands, or any solutions on that?
Yeah, thank you, Sudeep. Again, I really believe that this is really locally dependent, what motivates somebody to join. It's really hard to build, in that sense, the engagement if you don't know what the local motivations are. So I cannot say anything about that for now. But what we try to do, and what I try to explain also, for example, for the Delft project, is we really, for the Delft project, we're really trying to see how we can keep them motivated by adding new things for the ones that need that. Some people just really like to just have a steady thing and nothing else. Yeah, it really depends on the people. But the others are, they want to be sparked every time again. These are the type of people that are joining, we've noticed. And then, of course, there is an initial motivation. And most of the people that have been joining are really already intrinsically motivated to help their city understand more about climate change and climate adaptation processes. They understand that this is a problem, and they feel valuable adding to scientific research on this, and that's their motivation. So we continuously understand that motivation. So we continuously try to get back to them and say, hey, this is what we've been able to find by now with your input. And we try to engage them with that via infographics, newsletters. We also give them in the newsletters other activities or actualities that are occurring concerning this. So if there has been a researcher finding new knowledge about rainfall that is not per se related to what we're doing, we still share it with them. Maybe because it's from the local university or because it's about Delft. But we try to engage with them both on the relevance of their data input, more about the topics that they want to learn about, because often it's also something, if you keep learning, that makes you interested more. And the third is indeed to see if we can add to new motivations, so they really become the experts partly themselves, you know. So helping to write a paper, for example, only 5 of them wanted it, but they saw it as an extremely valuable part because they had never written a paper. So they only did a small part in it, but that doesn't matter because they were able to see how this process goes, and they added their input to it. And this is, I think very important to understand the motivations that people have. And for that, you need to do a whole research. That's like, this is something you cannot just know. You have to really, I have had a project actually recently that I had a completely, I completely hit on the wrong side of the motivation scale, and I never got any people interested. Or people were interested, but they didn't get activated. So I had to completely change that. I made a podcast episode about that, so please listen to it. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Sandra, for your wonderful presentation. I think we discussed about a lot of things today. And thank you, everyone, for your active participation. Thank you for signing up. And thank you for active participation in the discussion session, mostly. So maybe I will get back to you sometime later, David, since we are running out of time about your question. Yeah, so we will be continuing similar discussion in coming months. So we are planning to have at least 3 session of citizen science discussion series this year. So please don't forget to leave your feedback. And if you want to hear some specific topic, please recommend that. We will try to bring you the specific topic. And yeah, I hope your week, I hope you enjoy the rest of the week. And please don't forget, this is a special week for us because it's World Water Day and World Weather Day. And help everyone save the environment and save water. Thank you, everyone.